was just saying. Okay, we are live.
We're live.
We're live!
We're back. We're back and we are live. We're live and we're back. Welcome. Welcome to another edition, another installment. We are going to continue our discussion on covenants. So last week we talked about what is a covenant. So refresh the people. Who wants to refresh the people on what is a covenant?
Covenant is an agreement between two parties to do something or not do something.
But in the absolute simplest form, yes, 100%, 100%. Now, what do we add in that with the biblical covenant?
With the biblical covenant, we're looking at.
They're slicing animals in half, and there's some.
They're slicing and dicing. There's signs of the covenant, and the parties in the covenant, and the blood of the covenant, and the conditions of the covenant.
Yep.
So so it's like I guess a modern term would be a contract.
Yes.
Yes. A legally binding contract.
Yep. Yep. It is. It is. So, So as we go through the covenants, as we look at, and last week we talked about the Noahic covenant, Noah, that is.
Yeah, we talked about Adam.
We talked about Adam. We did talk about Adam, Eden, and those agreements or those covenants, and the idea that is everything that we see a textbook definition of the covenant? If we look at those aspects of it, is there blood? Is there? Can we identify the two parties? Do we know if it's conditional or unconditional? All those things. Hey, Brittany, how you doing? Welcome to the ride.
So we discussed.
Yeah, totally.
How many there were.
Right.
And I've read something earlier today, that said that there are those that believe that there are as many as 12 covenants. Right. So there's a very different.
There's varied opinions on that.
Varied opinions. Most scholars will agree to 7 definitely.
Okay.
The other 5 or so are up for debate.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Good way.
Right. And so, do you remember what the 7 predominant ones that you?
Noah, the Noahic, Abrahamic, Mosaic, priestly and Davidic.
Okay.
Are 5. The New Testament is 6.
Okay.
So
what was 7?
I don't know.
The land, the Palestinian covenant, what they call the Palestinian covenant.
Yeah, this one.
The Palestinian covenant. Right.
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
Where is it?
The land covenant.
Better
way to put it.
Yeah.
Major types, 2 parties.
So while she's looking for that, what you may be wondering is why the covenants? Why are we talking about the covenants? Why is it important to understand the covenants? And I would say if you want to understand the character of God, if you want to understand His relationship with us, it's important and informative to understand those covenants, because if you don't understand, for example, what is an unconditional covenant,
Right.
which is one which really just one side to it, where, for example, if I tell my kids, we're going to the store and I'm going to buy you some shoes. Right?
Maybe a different way to look at it, not saying that you're wrong, but obligatory versus promissory.
Okay.
That was one way they divided it up. The obligatory is more common, details the relationship between 2 parties of equal standing.
Okay.
Promissory, which is more what we see with Abrahamic and Davidic, focus on the relationship between what they reference a suzerain or a leader, royalty,
Yeah,
and the vassal,
sure.
the servant.
Sure.
So in this case, when we're looking at this, we're looking at God versus the people,
Right.
being the suzerain versus the
Right.
vassal. Okay, and in a lot of cases, in most human cases,
Right.
in the suzerain from the Near Eastern treaties
Okay.
covenant,
Yeah.
it was all on the vassal mostly to do,
Okay.
and then the penalties if not.
Right.
Whereas in the promissory that we have with God,
Mm,
the onus is almost always on Him,
right.
not
He
us.
says he will do.
Right.
Exactly. Even though He would be the royalty and not necessarily have to do in the case of a deity, it's actually the roles are swapped. Even though He's the royalty, we're the vassal. The person obliged to do things has been altered. So
No, that's good. That's good.
As
And
a thought.
I heard something about that as well, where the person of higher position, so in that case the royalty, basically puts themselves in a position, if you will, of service, of servitude to the lesser, the lower being.
right.
Yeah. And then there certainly is that idea of the conditional versus the unconditional, where the conditional involves some kind of a quid pro quo, and if you read it in the Bible, there will be some phrasing which includes if then,
Right.
if then.
So I'm thinking that I'm not for sure on their counting of, but something that I came across in my reading, the Abrahamic covenant was actually reiterated 3 different times.
But are those 3 different covenants?
It's not actually,
Actually,
but
it's just
it's
expanding. on
it's
the
expanded, it's reaffirmed, because we're not trying. So the Abrahamic covenant was initiated with, gee whiz, Abraham,
Right.
but Jeremiah and Ezekiel also reference and reinforce.
And they're still party to that.
Exactly.
Oh, well, so no, I wasn't thinking that. I was thinking of the if you will, the phases of the covenant specifically with Abraham.
I was just one of the things
Yeah.
though that I have a list of those too, but I was just thinking about one of those things that in their counting of, it's still the Abrahamic,
Right.
but
Mm.
David reiterates it, Ezekiel reiterates
what you're
it,
saying.
Jeremiah reiterates it. I mean, it's and in each one of those situations, it's not necessarily that it's tweaked,
Right.
but it's more understood.
Yeah, and like I said, it kind of expands on the wording of it.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, when he established it with Abram, and then next in 15 he established it with Abram through the promise, and then he goes to in 17 he changes his name and he expanded it, gives him more information about it, and then by the time you get to Isaac, and it gets reiterated again through to Isaac, the same,
Right,
and it's,
right.
it's a reiteration, and it get expanded again. It's like, okay, now let me give you a little bit more information about
Right.
it. Let me
Right.
give you a little bit more information
But
about my
each
part.
one of those covenants,
But all of
Noah,
them are
Abrahamic, all of those are built upon.
built upon the same
Right.
covenant.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, before we get too deep into it, let's pray and then let's get started with our discussion. And tonight we're going to focus on. I mean, we may get some periphery stuff, but we're going to talk about Abraham. All right. Dear Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for this opportunity to dive into your Word. We pray that you would just use our hearts and make our hearts fertile ground to just to plant and grow these seeds of knowledge, that we may understand your covenants and may understand your will toward us. We thank you and we bless you. In Jesus' name.
Amen.
All right. So Abraham.
Well, I would say that we're starting with Genesis 12. With
Abram.
Yeah.
Genesis 12. So
Genesis 12.
Let's go there. Do you want to read? Who wants to read? I can pull it up, but if somebody wants to read their version, you got it.
He's got it. Go for it.
ESV. It says, "Now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you, and I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed.
Starts it.
That's it.
That starts it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
Okay.
the beginning.
So that's the beginning of it.
And that's the good part about that is, again, it starts with the promise. Abram had
Right.
nothing to do with what God said he was going to do.
Right.
There was nothing that Abram was required to do other than, I'm
At least to
just telling you
start,
go,
yeah.
to start.
Right.
And he had nothing to do. All he said, just go. Go
Right.
and do what I tell you.
Right.
And this is what I'm going to do.
And so with that, we can see that is what we would call, that's what we would call an unconditional
Okay.
Unconditional covenant.
Unconditional.
You didn't have to do anything. God said this is what I'm going to do.
However, there were signs.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the signs is the circumcision.
Well, that didn't come in yet.
But I'm just saying,
Yeah.
it's part of the Abrahamic covenant.
Yeah,
That's
yes.
one of the signs that you're keeping the covenant
Yeah.
by performing the circumcision, to be a people set apart. That actually comes in more in 17.
Yeah, 17.
But
So this
It's
is the beginning of it.
So
12,
that's-
12, 1 through 3. That's where it starts. Then it jumps to Genesis 15, 18.
Yep. Which give Abraham's descendants all the lands, and I want you to pay attention to this, even at home, from the river of Egypt to the Euphrates. That's a lot of land.
That's a lot of
That is way more than
space.
Israel's got now. And there's a nice little rhyme to remember just how much it actually was. From the black to the red, from Baghdad to the Med. That's actually the promised land. From
More
the Black
sluggish
Sea,
than what it is right now.
from the Black Sea in south of Russia to the Red Sea, from Baghdad, which sits on the fork of the Tigris and the Euphrates,
Right.
to the Med. And according to Genesis 15, 18, this is where the land is actually spelled out. So it's way more than the 6 miles they've got
Sure.
In length.
Much.
in length that they've got.
Much different.
And so, well, I mean, so you bring up a good point, and if that's the promised land, how do people read that in terms of prophecy, right? I mean, is there something that says, okay, this physical land is going to be returned, or is it now a birthright that has been
Forfeited.
right?
That's been absconded with? I think it's both.
Okay.
I think it's both. And the formation of Israel as a state as a country state in 1948 started us down the path of that prophetic coming back
Okay.
and calling his people together, because that's prophetic by itself,
Right.
is to gather the Jews from the diaspora, from dispersion around the world, diaspora, and gather them back to the promised land and to Jerusalem in particular. But it's a start.
Okay. The start of what?
It's a start of the fulfillment of the prophecy. It's a step along the way.
Okay.
So, in my opinion, later on,
Yeah.
the promised land will literally
Okay.
encompass all of that. But for now,
Okay.
we got 60 square miles.
Okay. No. I'm just curious how do people view it, because in one sense, I mean, for example, if you have a bunch of land, it's your land, but you don't use it, or there's other people on it, that doesn't make it any less yours.
Right, except
Mm-hmm.
two things.
Okay.
One, every Arab from those nations would argue that it is not the Jews' land.
Okay.
So it can't be if they, you know what I'm saying? If they're saying, no, it's ours. That's one. Now, on the flip side, though, it says that the descendants, Abram's descendants, would be given that land.
Right.
It could be argued that Ishmael's descendants are, in fact, on it.
Their descendants of Abraham.
That's a great point.
They are on it.
As
So,
a matter of fact, that would be Abram's firstborn.
correct.
Okay.
So, Ishmael. So,
Ishmael, right.
yeah. So, in a way, it's not incorrect. However, it was the promised land of Israel was supposed to be that specific square whatever. But in part, it was fulfilled. It is fulfilled in the fact that Abraham's descendants do have it.
Okay.
Maybe not the correct
Right.
sons of, but
Right.
yeah.
Well, and so that we touched on this last night. That then is a product of impatience,
Yeah.
Yes.
a product of a lack of faith.
Yes.
Because one of the things it says here, and hopefully everybody got the. Did you post this chart?
I did.
You did post the chart. So if you look at the chart, we're looking at line 4, where we're under the dispensation of promise, and it begins with the call of Abraham, and it runs until the giving of the Mosaic law. The responsibility is to believe in the promise.
Right.
And so at the giving, at contract signing, if you will, Abram's duty, his responsibility was to believe in the promises. Right? Go to this land and I will.
Right.
You have to believe in that promise. So that's the and so because he was anxious, he decided that he was going to father a child
Hagar.
with Hagar, who was his wife's servant, right?
And in that day,
That's right.
the children of the handmaid belonged to the wife,
Right,
not the handmaid.
right. And so through his impatience, now we actually see, even today, the result of that impatience, because you got these two children, Ishmael and
Judah,
right?
Isaac. Yeah.
And Isaac. Yeah.
So because God promises him to be. I see it. God promises him to be the father of many nations,
Right.
to which he is.
Mm-hmm.
However, because of the impatience,
Right.
all right, did not come through. Oh, there. What does the promised land mean? That's where everyone will go in the future. Well, that's where New Jerusalem will be.
Right. Where New Jerusalem will
So
be.
yeah, everybody will go there.
But that promise, when I think about the promised land, and I think that the Bible supports that, that was a promise that was given specifically to a specific people.
I agree.
That's given to Abraham.
Abraham's descendants.
And his descendants.
Right.
So
it's reiterated through Isaac and through Jacob.
Yep.
Right.
That particular promise, like I said, that's where the what they call the Palestinian covenant, or the land covenant,
Right.
is reiterated again.
Yeah.
That's what it's talking about, the promised land, the land that God promised to his specific people to
Right.
have in perpetuity.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And so if you look up on the chart, it says, okay, who is this promise given to? On the far right, it says to the Jews. Right. Some of them are going to be to the whole race, so all of humanity. Some to the Jews, some to Jews and Gentiles specifically. But yeah, that's and so this is where you where I would say you got to be careful, because some people might come to you and say, well, God, as a Christian, God promised me the promised land. No, he didn't.
No, he didn't.
No, we did not. We did not.
Right, but some people will say things like that and make that argument like, oh, well, we're supposed to be, we need to go back, and go to the promised land. Okay, you can go visit, but it wasn't promised to you.
And that's an example, a prime example of replacement theology.
Right, right. Yeah, where you say, well,
where Christians have replaced Jews as the chosen people.
That's also that penknife theology where you're just cutting out the part that you want.
Yes.
Cherry picking.
Yeah, trying to appropriate it unto yourself.
Yep. So that's so did we get all of her question, or there's a second part?
No, that's it.
Okay. Oh, was that a place we'll go to in the future? Okay,
Yeah.
that was the next part of it. Okay, cool. So, Brittany, hopefully that answered your question. Give a north, south, or thumbs up. If not, we'll reattack. All right. So we talked. Call of Abraham, Genesis 11 and 10, and did we get to 12, 1 through 4?
Yeah.
Well, we read 12.
We read 12, 1 through 4.
1 through, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So that's where we're promised to make Abraham a great nation and bless and make his name great, so he'll be a blessing to bless those who bless him and curse those who curse him.
Right.
That's what that is. The second part then comes in 15, to give Abraham's descendants all the land of all the promised land.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
Or this became referred to as the promised land.
Right.
Black to red, Baghdad to the Med. That's your map. And then the third part comes in 17, to make Abraham the father of many nations and of many descendants, and give the land of Canaan to his descendants, is to be a permanent sign, and the circumcision is to be the permanent sign of this everlasting covenant with Abraham and his male descendants.
Okay. Do you have the actual verses? Because you kind of read
17, 9 through 14.
Okay.
And God said to Abraham, as for you, we need to back that up.
Yeah, I find myself doing that all the time.
Yeah.
You can't start right there.
No, you got to start at
I
one
need
and just kind of
context.
work your way down through it a little bit.
Right.
Work way up to it. It said, okay, verse 1 says, when Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I am God Almighty, walk before me and be blameless, that I may make my covenant between me and you, and may multiply you greatly. Then Abram fell on his face, and God said to him, behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be the father of a multitude of nations. No longer shall your name be called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham. Mm-hmm. For I have made you the father of a multitude of nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful, and I will make you into nations, and kings shall come from you. And I will establish my covenant between me and you and your offspring after you throughout their generations, for an everlasting covenant, to be God to you and to your offspring after you. And I will give to you and to your offspring after you the land of your sojournings, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. Now, then he goes on to the next part of this.
As for you,
Yeah.
your part,
Yeah. And God said to Abram, as for you, you shall keep my covenant, you and your offsprings after you throughout their generations. This is my covenant, which you shall keep between me and you and your offspring after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised.
Okay.
this shall be the sign of the covenant.
And you shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskins, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. This is the sign. So, wait a minute, keep going.
Okay.
He who is 8 days old among you shall be circumcised, every male throughout your generations, whether born in your house or bought with your money from any foreigner who is not of your offspring. Both he who is born in your house and he who is bought with your money shall surely be circumcised. So shall my covenant be in your flesh, an everlasting covenant.
Okay,
Now.
so it used that term about 7 times in what you just read, and that's everlasting covenant.
Yeah.
And so
And a sign.
And
a
the
sign.
Sign. Just like the rainbow was the sign of the covenant with Noah, the foreskin being circumcised
right.
is the sign of the covenant.
Right.
Is the sign of the covenant.
And so in that last column on that chart that's posted there, it asks the question, does it continue today?
Yes.
Right. So yes. So the Noahic covenant still continues.
Yes.
The Abrahamic covenant still continues. Right. But Brittany had a question on there. I see something. It's do Christians have a promised land?
And so if you're saying there's no promised land for Christians, I must have missed something. It's not that there's not one. They will be in New Jerusalem. They will go to the promised land because that's where New Jerusalem will be, is in the promised land. And that is where we will worship for 1,000 years or whatever it is. So no, as a specific, this land is your land, this land is my land. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no.
Right. So yeah,
no, there's not.
No, you can look up Manifest Destiny and all that stuff and things that people came up with, and that's all well and good. But in terms of a political jurisdiction that you might be thinking of, like, yes, this is Christian land.
No, and I guess another way to look at it too is that as believers we are adopted into
correct
the body, into the family of Abraham, and as adoptees we gain all the rights and privileges of born children.
Correct, because you're grafted in.
So we're because we're grafted in, not and under the adoption thing, under the adoption principle, we have just as much right to the promised land as those who are born children of Abraham.
Right.
But you don't have it as a birthright.
It's not a promise. It's like, okay, so if we adopt a kid, it's like, okay, well, does this become their house? I would say it would go to
if
the
we
birth
adopted, yes.
Right.
But if we only fostered, not necessarily.
No. Okay,
maybe go that way.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So being adopted in gives you all those rights and privileges. Being
right.
fostered is not.
Right. You're a long-term visitor.
Yeah.
A very welcome visitor. You got the keys and the code, but it's not necessarily yours.
Right. If they're still living descendants, blood descendants, you will not be getting unless there's a will and whatever.
Right. That's one of the things that Paul addressed when he was talking to the believers. I think it was in Corinthians, or it might have been Galatians, when he was talking about not everybody who is born of the flesh are Abraham's seed, but those who are of the faith of Abraham become Abraham's seed.
Yeah.
And so as believers, again, that principle of adoption joins us to the promises and the provision of Abraham.
Yeah, this little article here even it says the blessings promised with Abraham on behalf of the Gentiles are directed to the nations and not to Israel, though they will come through Israel. So even though it's not even though Gentiles don't have a promised land, like specific land set aside according to the Bible, the fact that they are believers allows them that same access.
Right.
Yeah. It's like the 12 tribes each had a certain area, a portion unto them.
Right.
Correct.
And as believers, we don't have a specific area within the land that's apportioned to us, but we have access to the land.
Correct. Correct.
A couple of other things it addresses here is, okay, so we can talk through the failures and the judgment.
Let me point out this too.
Go ahead.
While I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
With the Noahic covenant,
Mm-hmm.
God initiated. He supplied the covenant. He supplied the sign. He
Yep.
supplied the blood.
Yep.
There was nothing on the part of Noah, no part that Noah played in it. Okay.
Right.
When he began his covenant with Abram, he initiated. There was no part for Abram to play other than apply faith in
Yes.
what was said.
Yeah.
Okay. Then as he comes into 17 and he changes his name, now he expands it and gives Abram and his descendants a part that they have to play,
Right.
Which
with
is the
regards to the
circumcision.
covenant, which is the sign of the covenant, which is the circumcision. That becomes a part for them to play.
Right.
I bring that up because as we go when we go through, you'll see that in each case, each time God initiates the covenants, He gives man more role,
Responsibility.
That's
more
good.
responsibility, and more of a role to play in fulfilling the covenant.
So that's a good point, right? If we progress from the initial call, and then we move to the circumcision, which is a sign, does that, and I think the answer is no, but does that change the character of the covenant?
You know, when He spoke to Abram, it was promised. He made it. It was through promise, and then when He established the covenant in 15 and in 17, it becomes more of an agreement between two parties, and there's things that has to be done.
Right.
Okay. It just helps me to understand it.
Right.
you know, to
Right.
focus
Right.
it. And so when we get to the new covenant and the Mosaic covenant, and the new covenant, and things like that, you'll see how that progression.
Right. There's much more of a two-party contract to it
Right.
than there is at this point. And I bring that up because even though we can, and we'll talk through this, the failures and then the judgment, it doesn't make it any less of an unconditional covenant. It's still an unconditional covenant. He's just asking you to do these things. He's asking you, demonstrate this sign, right?
Right.
This sign of the circumcision. Okay, what do we got here? Hey! What name is that? That one I can't read.
It's gonna catch up.
Alright, it's going to catch up.
Juma!
Juma!
It's Juma!
Hey, Juma, make sure you give your mom the this address so that she can continue to hang out with us even when she goes.
Yeah, just text it to her. She doesn't have to have Facebook. So if you go to share or manage, I don't doubt you'll have manage, but you can share the link in a text message and it'll take her right to it. Anyway, yeah, so I agree with what you're saying, that it is expanded upon and that it starts as the promise and then becomes the covenant because the blood then portion is added.
Right.
So,
Okay.
hey,
Excited.
goodness gracious. So anyway,
Right. So let's turn to where it talks about the failures of this promise and then the judgment because of the failures. Again, the promise is still unconditional, but when we go to this points out Exodus 14:11 through 12, and also Genesis 37:26 and 27. What was that?
Wait.
Exodus 14.
Genesis. I'm gonna get Genesis 37.
what was the other one you had?
It was.
Not Exodus. Can't be.
Mm-mm.
Back it up. Go back to Genesis. Back to Genesis.
Yeah, I don't know why they would have.
Well, it continues on, like I said, it was reiterated and it was renewed on Mount Sinai with Moses in Exodus 14.
That's
I
right.
might be with you.
14,
And so
8.
they're talking about the failures was the murmuring
And the complaining.
and the complaining. And so the murmuring and the complaining, why is that a failure? It's a failure because what were they murmuring and complaining about? They were
A lack of faith.
a lack of faith. Why, it was so much better in Egypt. It was so,
And that's actually where the Quran actually comes in and says we failed in the covenant as well.
yeah. Yep.
Because these covenants are also mentioned in the Quran, so this is not just...
Yeah. And then sins of all sorts in Genesis 37:26.
All right, so the four times the Abrahamic covenant was renewed, though, was Moses in Deuteronomy 14,
Okay.
was Joshua in Joshua 24, by the high priest Jehoiada after the idolatrous Queen Athaliah had been deposed in 2 Kings, and then King Josiah also in 2 Kings. So the first one is 2 Kings 11, the other one is 2 Kings 13. Those are some of the reiterations. Wait, where else? It was also mentioned several times about with Jeremiah and Ezekiel. Deuteronomy chapters 11, 31, and 34. Ezekiel in 36 and 37. So Elijah in 1 Kings 19. It's a lot. It's a lot. There's a lot more. Let's just put it this way. It ain't new, and it's reiterated.
Well, okay. So, but here's something.
Somebody else is watching too. No, I get it.
Hey, how you doing? So here's something I'll throw at you. If we are adopted.
Oh, it's Katrisa and Martha. Miss Martha is watching. She's already sent it to Miss Martha.
Oh,
and it's
good.
Katrisa. That's who that is.
All right.
It's Miss Katrisa.
Well, hey.
Hello.
So if we are adopted into the family, if we say that this covenant still applies, that means that we have those same responsibilities. We have the responsibility to believe in the promises.
Correct.
Right?
Right.
And so if we have the responsibility to believe in the promises, then I would say that we should also heed the warnings of the failures that we
Previously,
were witness,
yeah.
that we're able to witness through the Bible, whether it's the murmuring because the promise has we're not at the promised land yet. Okay, well, we're supposed to believe in the promises of God.
Regardless.
That's our job.
Regardless.
That's our responsibility as pertains to the covenant. And of course, you jump into the New Testament, and then there's the distinction. This really it's a rift between Paul and Peter, right, on the sign.
Yeah, and like I said, that goes back to what I said about in Galatians 3:6 says, even as Abraham believed God and it was accounted to him for righteousness, know you therefore that they which are of faith, the same are the children of Abraham.
Right. Right.
Something else.
And this is where, and because of some of these things, the circumcision and whatnot, this is how the Judaizers
Yes.
of the early church were able to pull people in, saying that they needed to be part of this covenant in order to be part of, because Messianics will call the New Testament actually the Brit Hadashah, which means the renewed covenant.
Brit Hadashah.
Brit Hadashah,
Right.
yes. Not the new, but the renewed.
Right.
Because all we're doing in every single one of these instances, regardless of if there's 7 or there's 12, is we're renewing that promise, that promise to believe.
Right.
That choice to believe in God and what He's doing
So
in every one of these instances.
am I far off in saying that in the same way that Deuteronomy is the second, kind of the second telling of, in the second,
The Cliff Notes version?
the Cliff Notes version, but yeah, the second giving of the law, and the same that the renewed covenant then is the covenants have been given over and over again, but a reiteration
Yes.
with
Messiah as the sign.
Right.
Yes. And so that's where I was going with the question, right? So if the sign in this case, in terms of the Abrahamic covenant, was the circumcision, now flash forward. That's it's pretty deep. Flash forward, right, with the with the rift between Peter and Paul, right? Some people, you must be circumcised in the flesh.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of them says, well, you're just mutilating your flesh. It says, beware the concision. I think that's what it says in the King James Version, those mutilators of the flesh. Because much like we kind of poke fun at the people that are like, I'm gonna get baptized on Sunday, and I'm gonna act like the same old me immediately following that. Well, you just went and got your clothes wet. Mm-hmm. In the same way, it says, you know what? Beware of people that are like, okay, so you cut yourself.
Right.
Okay.
It's a legalistic following and interpretation,
right,
rather than because it goes on to talk about the circumcision of the heart.
Of the heart, yes.
So being circumcised of the flesh is not necessarily their collars are plugged in over there. The circumcision is not. It's not saying that this is a wrong thing to do.
Right.
But it has to be done, as we've said many, many, many times,
right,
with the right heart motive.
Right.
If we're getting circumcised because,
right,
because this is what God asked us to do, and we're trying to live as God asked us to do, without trying to be oh so righteous.
Right.
Then yes, go ahead. But like you said, if you're just doing it because it's the letter of the law, then you...
Right.
Listen, that's what Paul, like I said, that's
Yeah.
why Paul went into it so deeply in the book of Galatians. Just definitely read all of the book of Galatians, because Paul completely lays out our standing in Abraham by faith, in the blessings by faith, in the covenant by faith,
right,
and by trying to step outside of the faith, which was what established Abraham in the first place,
right,
then we completely negate the works that had already been done by Christ.
Right.
Yeah, because if we can just work our way into heaven, because that's what people want. Well, I followed this law, I followed that law, I followed, but what did Paul say? He said, I did it all.
Right. He did.
I was circumcised on the 8th day.
Pharisee of the Pharisees.
Yeah, I did everything, but all that stuff, that I once said, well, that's my righteousness. That's basically now filthy rags. It doesn't measure. It's not that you shouldn't do it, because if your heart leads you there, okay, do that. But if you're going to stand on those physical works as your righteousness, but your heart is...
Then your salvation becomes your accomplishment.
Right.
Right, which is what Messiah proved by being the perfect Jew, that nobody else could do.
Right.
That nobody else could do that.
Right.
So what we're talking... So let's just kind of boil it down.
Okay, go ahead.
The covenant...
Yeah.
And I'm only saying this because roughly 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Covenant is a ridiculously important thing.
Yes.
However, if you come to covenant with the wrong heart motives, you're wrong before you walk in the door.
Right. That's good.
You're never going to get what it is that you want to get if you're coming in because black and white tells you.
Right.
Because a book tells you.
Right.
There's never going to be, my being kosher isn't for me to be more righteous or for me to be better than somebody else. My being kosher is because God asked it of his children.
Right.
And I'm trying to do my best to do at least what I can do.
Right.
Do it to the fullest.
Right.
There are plenty of things that I am not going to, like, somebody cuts me off in traffic and I might swear a little bit. I might have an unkind thought, But this thing, I can do.
Right.
I can do this.
Right.
I can do this much. I can reach out to here. God's going to reach the rest of the way, but I can at least reach to here. And I'm going to do my utmost to do it. But
with that, I like that because I'm looking at a note I made, I don't know how long ago, concerning that word everlasting, the length, dealing with the length of the covenant when God established this in 17, in Genesis 17. He used that word everlasting, as you said. He pointed it out. He used it over and over again. But he also used a statement in verse 7 that says, I will establish. And when you go into the Hebrew and the original language of what that means, it means that he will confirm it, continue it, decree it, endure it, get it up, make good, help, hold, lift up, ordain, perform, raise up, rear up, rouse up, set up, make to stand, stir up, strengthen, succeed, assure, make sure, uphold. He's doing all that.
Right.
Not us.
no, because we can't.
Because we can't.
Right. Right.
We can only do so much.
That's true. That's true.
And the promise is that he will come the rest of the way. And we have to rest in that promise.
Absolutely.
We have to rely in that promise.
Right. Right. And I'll say, it's not just the dietary,
No.
it's not just
That's just
it's
an
not
example.
I'm saying, but what are the signs? What are the real signs? What are the heart signs that are following you? Is it just, okay, well, I do all these things? Well, yeah, you could do all those things and still be like the nastiest person on the planet.
And you still came in the door with the wrong motive.
They came in the door with the wrong motive,
Yep.
right? And so, when you talk about, okay, well, I'm doing these things, but then I see all the other things that you're doing, which is, okay, you're involved in the church, you're leading the Bible studies, you're taking care of people, at every, it's the whole thing.
Right.
It's the whole picture.
It's not just
and
one
again,
piece of pie.
we're not talking about working your way into heaven.
No.
Because you can't do that. Because if you could work your way into heaven, then there's no point in Christ dying on the cross.
True.
It's just that if people worked hard enough, they'd get there.
It's another definite show of you show me your faith and I'll show you my faith by my works.
That's right.
It's always, and it always comes down to this, and whatever it is, it's a choice and it's a heart thing. If you're doing this, even if you're doing all of these things, but if you're doing it with the wrong motive, you failed before you started.
Right.
So you've got to have the right heart.
Right.
And like you said, if you're doing this, that, and the other, but do you have to do all of those things? No.
Right.
But that's the other part of it, is that because you have that heart, you're going to do all of those things.
Right.
It's sort of like a cart before the horse type, dog wagging the tail. There's no chicken or the egg. Well, actually, the chicken came first. Because God didn't create eggs, God created chickens.
Yeah.
So, but it's like that snowball. You
Yeah.
know, one thing happens because this happened, but because that happened. And what you were saying about the everlasting and he established, it's the same thing with being saved. We're it's a process, past, and Dr. Treadwell was talking about it on Sunday. It's past, present, future.
Right.
You were saved, you're being saved, you will be saved. It's that same.
Absolutely.
It's that I will establish, because think about it. He's establishing, even though he established it with Abraham, hence its name, he's also establishing it with us.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
The Noachian, the Noachian, with Noah's covenant. I can speak some languages, and I always get tripped up on some stuff. But even though he established, or he spoke to Noah and Abraham and David and Jeremiah and all of these and Messiah, he spoke to all those people and they got the name on it. He's still got to do those same things with each one of us every single time, in every single generation of every single child.
Yeah.
So it's never ending.
So,
Everlasting.
well, and so again, I gotta go back to, if it's everlasting, now we move on to this next one, which is the judgment, right? This next category. So, in the time
You'd be
of,
cut off.
That's
For Abraham, that's the judgment.
Well-
You'd be cut off.
you'd be cut off, but what in fact happened in Exodus? They end up in bondage.
Oh, you're saying
Yeah, so at that time they ended up in bondage.
the first time.
Right.
Yeah, it's happened more than once.
And so that was the judgment of that day. Is there a similar type of judgment that we experience today? I say we as a church, we as a people end up experiencing today because of our failure to believe, or murmuring, sins, failure to believe in the promises. Is there a bondage, or what does that, because it's an everlasting covenant, what is the modern day thing that people ought to be like, wow, I really am suffering from this, and I gotta get back to what my responsibility is, which is to believe in the promises of God.
So is there a parallel to
That's right.
between?
I don't know that there's going to be a specific.
I can't think of one.
It's going to be individual to each of us. We're not
Okay.
going to get, we're not going to get the job or the
Right.
house, or we're going to, suffer financially, or,
Right.
hand to mouth type ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I think all of those things play in as the wages of sin,
Right.
and that being our judgment.
So
We're
you-
all beholden to the sin that
Wow.
then takes control of us because we don't stand in the promise.
So you say we have our own
We each have our own personal hell? Yeah.
our own individual Egypt.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, and now that you say that,
yeah.
think about
Where's your
it.
Egypt?
You know what, though? No, it goes, because when we read the Haggadah for Passover, for
Right.
Pesach,
Yeah.
it even says it in the telling that we're supposed to put ourselves literally in their shoes,
As
that
if
we are being freed from bondage,
Right. And so what is
walking
and-
into redemption.
And so because most of us have not been in chains, most of us have not even, I've never been to Egypt. I think I've flown over it a couple times. But,
we all experience.
But we
The
all
way
experience
to-
bondage
the
and
way-
slavery.
That's right. And so the way that, as we think about it from a Passover perspective, and you could think about making bricks with no straw, right? Is that it?
Yeah.
Make bricks with, but a lot of us can't really fathom that. But we can fathom what our own personal Egypt is, what our individual Egypt is. And the idea, as we as we walk through. And I think when we do the Passover thing, we need to bring that point home to say, you know what, maybe you don't have your own experience with building bricks without straw, but you do have your own individual Egypt. And so what is that
Your
thing
own individual suffering, absolutely.
and so imagine yourself being freed from that. And if you can imagine yourself being freed from that, and hopefully you have been, then you can understand the work that God did.
Then the passing over of
And
the
the
angel
passing
of
over,
death,
yes.
and the redemption of the Lamb all brings home, much more physically brings home what those things
That's
really are.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, this got real good in the last
few minutes. And look, and I just thought about something too. We're gonna have to go back. I guess we'll get back into it. When you think about Deuteronomy 28, y'all know that for some reason that one's been
Sticking in your
sticking
head.
in me, keep coming back up because so many people grab Deuteronomy 28 1 through 7 and 1 through 14 and forget about 15 through 61 and all that.
Right.
You know, as though the rest of that chapter doesn't apply. So when we think about, like you said, the judgments that might come from stepping outside of covenant, from acting outside of covenant, from not upholding our responsibilities in covenant.
Yeah.
See, there are a multitude of things that could become a part of your life.
I mean, because God's plan is going to will out, whether we like it or not, and it's going to happen with us or in spite of us.
Yeah.
And with us would make life so much easier, except that we're human.
We talked about last night about the test and the tribulation.
Exactly. But we tend to want to take it back off the altar.
Right.
And take ourselves back off the altar.
Right. Load it in your backpack and walk on out the church.
Oh, here, God, here, take this. But you know what? Oh, wait, I'm going to take that with me when I leave.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I still got use for that.
Hold on, wait now. You know, it's and we're not saying that it's not that it's easy.
No.
It's not, especially if it's something that's been there with you for a long time. You've got to learn to put it down. Just like a lot of us have to learn to do a lot of things or unlearn. It's, read the whole chapter, not just just what you want.
Right.
Don't forget. Don't think it's all rainbows and sunshine. Remember that he's a jealous God, and he's and he will curse those that curse you type idea.
Right.
Dry bones rise up, but I'm going to drop a mountain on your head if you...
So, I mean, it's a great point, and I want to share this because you were talking about the idea of the temptations and the idea that it's hard to leave stuff on the altar. But last night we were in First Corinthians chapter 10. And as we
from Israel's history, that's the subtitle here.
Yes, it's true. But where I want to take you is to 1 Corinthians 10. And by the way, she hasn't been typing because if you go on the Facebook page, every single verse that we've been talking about is on that sheet.
Pretty much. I'll repost it in this week's one as well.
Yeah, just refresh it, pin it to the top or something.
Yep. 1 Corinthians 10.
1 Corinthians 10.
Hey man, you messing up my...
Where are we going to go? I don't know how far I'm going to go back. All right, I'm just going to start at 10:1. For I do not want you to be ignorant of the fact, brothers and sisters, that our ancestors were all under the cloud, that they all passed through the sea. They were all baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. They all ate the same spiritual food and drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the spiritual rock that accompanied them, and that rock was Christ. Nevertheless, God was not pleased with most of them. Their bodies were scattered in the wilderness. Now these things occurred as examples to keep us from setting our hearts on evil things as they did. Do not be idolaters as some of them were, as it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink and got up to indulge in revelry. We should not commit sexual immorality as some of them did, and in one day 23,000 of them died. We should not test Christ as some of them did and were killed by snakes, and do not grumble as some of them did and were killed by the destroying angel. These things happened to them as examples and were written down as warnings for us, on whom the culmination of the ages has come. So if you think you are standing firm, be careful that you don't fall. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, He will also provide you a way out so that you can endure it. Therefore, my dear friends, flee from idolatry. And so I bring that up because she's talking about, the idea that when we see something, when we try to lay something on the altar and before we leave the church, then we're like, oh, well, I need to pick that back up, leave with what you came. Like, no, that's not the point. That's not the point. But that is a temptation, and every person is tempted. What's that?
Keep going.
Oh.
She saw the dogs.
Okay. Every person, in as much as people are tempted by the sexual immorality and the idolatry and all the evil things of the world, people are tempted by those things that drag us down.
Yeah.
It may not be that you're like, oh, I gotta go do this or I gotta go do that. It may be I gotta hold on to this. I can't let this thing go. And so, but that's common. And just as he says here, when you are tempted, He will provide you a way out so that you can endure it.
Yeah.
No matter what it is. And so last night, as we talked about, it doesn't matter if it's a test or a temptation. The solution is actually the same. He provides you a way out. So endure. Endure.
Yeah. That's it.
So there you go. So we've been talking about covenants last week and this week.
Man, it's
We
getting
go to keep going.
We're going to keep talking about covenants.
started.
We're going to keep talking about covenants. And I'm out of town on Wednesday next week, so we can try to do
Well,
this.
this is Thursday, not Wednesday.
It's I think it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 16, 17, and 18. What days are?
Oh yeah, you'll be back on the 18th.
I have to check the flight times. Let me look at the flight times. Let me look at the flight times.
Well, it could just be Daniel and I then sitting here doing this.
Fine.
Because you might be on a plane then.
Yep.
Let me look. All right.
He's got to go to Boston.
Yeah, but if nothing else, we did figure out how that whole thing works with the.
Yeah, but if you're on a plane, you can't do that either.
Yeah. All right. Better.
Yes. So, yes, we know how to bring you on if you're sitting in the airport. But, so next week is the Mosaic Covenant.
Next week will be the Mosaic Covenant.
A lot of stuff.
Yes. But what I want you to take out of this and all the covenants, keep a hold of that sheet and keep looking through it week by week. But there are some covenants that are still in effect today. Continue to process. How does this impact my life? How do I, what's my responsibility in it? With the Abrahamic covenant, it is to believe in that's your number one responsibility. Believe in the promises of God. That's it. So if you can do that, then all the rest can kind of work itself out.
Sort of like in the beginning. If you can believe in the beginning.
Yeah, that's right.
The rest is easy.
That's right. Yeah.
Easier.
Yeah.
All right, but hey, thanks for watching. We're gonna wrap it up. We'll pray. Any announcements? Big stuff, little stuff. For those in the area, we are having the men's breakfast on Saturday
All right,
at
get down.
8:30. If you are going, you can leave a note for Aaron, and I'll figure out how to get word to the planning team so we can make sure and have a plate for you, because it will be catered. But if you do come out, bring some gardening tools like a weed whacker, and bring glasses, everything, because we're going to get some stuff done after breakfast. Maybe no trees fall on people's cars in the parking lot, or branches. It's just.
I wish I could come, but I'm like I said, I'm scheduled to be at work so far.
All right.
So,
We'll see what happens.
we'll see.
So we're going to continue covenant with Moses next week, and
It's gonna get deep.
first when we got deep with this one, we're going to get deeper.
Right.
First Friday, don't forget about Foundations of Faith on the first Friday of the month. I do, if you're not a Facebook member, you can be one just for that, because unfortunately I can't just send you a link for that one. That's a private group. So, because we don't want the haters. Or you can come and join us. Wednesday night Bible study at 6:30 at the church. 6:37.
So with that, it's actually it's supposed to be 7,
but it's just
so it's 6:30 for prayer, 7 o'clock for Bible study.
Yep.
So
And if you haven't,
Down.
I would go back. If you didn't watch it, or you want a really good sermon, I go back and watch Dr. Treadwell's
Yeah. that was
this
pretty
past
good.
week.
That was good.
You can find it on YouTube. City Church Opelika on YouTube.
Yep.
Opelika, Opelika, City Church of Opelika, and he did a really nice, a really good, really deep.
He threw a lot of good nuggets out.
yeah.
Oh yeah, he
A lot of good nuggets.
the place, remembering that place. Yeah. So
yeah,
that's
and the place isn't necessarily an actual place.
right.
But anyway, yeah. So I think that's everything.
That's it. That's everything. Awesome.
Enjoyed it.
Yes. Thank y'all so much for joining. If you like it, give us a thumbs up. Leave comments. Share it. Put us on your stream feed thing, and bring some other friends next time. Yeah. Whatever the interwebs allows you to do.
All right.
Well, let's pray. Dear God, thank you so much for the revelation of your word. Thank you for this opportunity to join together and learn more about your covenants. Help us to always just be faithful to our part of the covenant, and just accepting and believing your promises, knowing that you are faithful, and that without you we can't really do anything. And so we thank you for this word. We thank you for this time. We thank you for the gift of salvation. In Jesus' name, amen. All right.
Ah.
Good night.